Well, neither one of these are good. I think we were supposed to get some more after the last one, but nobody does it, so
Okay.
if it ain't gonna get done, it ain't gonna get done.
Now what?
Just get another light one.
I got a floor lamp.
Well, any kind of light.
Yeah, true. Chris, how'd this be? We could put a 300-watt bulb in here? Where do you want me to put this?
I'll stick right there, right next to where Grandma's going to be.
Here or here?
I'm right next to her, wherever she's going to sit.
She's going to sit right there.
Right there.
Okay.
Put her right in that corner there.
Okay. So I'll put a 300-watt bulb in here?
Well, I don't know if I can do that. Try it. Just leave the bulb that's in right now and plug it in.
Okay, let me just get back here and plug it in. All right, how's that? How's that? Okay.
Taping.
Okay.
The button over the light went out. So
Okay.
you know you're taping.
Okay, I'll turn it off.
It's recording, yeah.
Okay, now it's recording.
Okay, we on?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's too bad the rest of the family isn't here.
Well, we've got it. And Larry.
Full pause. Okay, go for it.
Okay.
So recording now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are gathered in Jones's house on June the 25th, 1990. You are there. Now, the most pressing question that I have is, Mother, why do you always like Jim better than me?
Larry! Jim was the firstborn, that's why.
I'm going to take you across my knee.
What we're trying to find out today is the path that the Schrantzes took when they immigrated to the United States, and a little background history. And we have a couple experts here. Maybe you can remember something.
It was my father's idea to come to America.
Why?
My mother,
Why did he want to come to America?
Get real quick.
working conditions were better and better pay.
Were they starving in
No,
Austria?
not exactly, but they weren't living high on the hog either.
Well, I heard the story that he was walking down the road one day with a friend, and he says, "I'm going to America, Charlie. You want to go next week?" And he said, "Yeah, let's go."
Well, not exactly. He went to visit these people, and my father had no idea that these people were planning on going to America until he got there, and then they were talking about it. So, and they were going to go to, I don't know, this place where they had to register, or whatever you call it, you know, when you want to go on to America. And by boat was the only way. And so he told this man, he says, I haven't got the money now, but they had to put down a deposit. And he asked these people if they would do that for him. And because they were going to do that next day or very soon, so they said yes, they would do it for him. And he said, I'll pay you back as soon as I get the money and I see you again. So he took care of that.
Oh, we know.
And so then my dad went, and then of course, now I don't know, we came later. I don't know how much later, but I don't know who took care of that part for my mother.
How much did it cost, Grandpa?
That I don't know either.
When he came to the United States, I heard he came to Chicago first. Why?
Well, because there were people from the same village that my folks came from. And so they were all German-speaking people, and of course that's where he wanted to go.
Did you know any of their names?
Oh, sure he knew their names.
Do you know what their names were?
No, I don't.
Now, when he got to Chicago, how did he get into the roofing business? He had to do something else before.
Well, yeah, he took any job that come along to earn some money.
And he said there was a man in Chicago that was awfully good. He had his fortune told in Austria. And this woman told him that he was going to cross a large body of water, and he was going to meet a man that was going to be very good to him. And, you know,
But how
And-
he ever met Sanborn,
I don't know.
and they got, then my father got the job as a roofer. And this Mr. Sanborn, he took care of the office work and to get the customers.
Now, how long after Grandpa was here before he sent for Grandma?
Well, I was a year old. I don't know how old I was when my father left. But as soon as he had enough money for my mother and us kids to come, that's when we came to America.
There was Lizzie, Rosie, and Josie.
And I was a year old.
Lizzie, Rosie, on that ship and running all over the place.
Not
Rosie.
me.
Rosie was.
Rosie.
He had to have come over 2 years before then because, right?
He couldn't have, because she
Because
was
she was
a
only a year old
when
unless
she
she
came.
had help at
only a
home
year
from.
old.
Yeah, but see, the pregnancy was 9 months, so that would take care of most of the first year. And then if this little chick was a year old when they got here.
Well, you weren't born when your father had left?
I don't know. That I don't know either.
Trying to pin the time down a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, what was the story about on the boat where Grandma found this kid that helped them corral the three kids?
These people were, my mother knew these people, and they helped my mother with the kids, with Lizzie and Rosie. Well, with me, I was only a year old, so I didn't do that much running around.
Oh, I thought there was some
Well,
boy
Ma
that...
told me
Oh,
that
there was
this
a boy.
There was a boy alone. He was 18 years old.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he helped Ma because he didn't bring enough food along, because they had to bring enough food to last the whole trip. And Grandma had big loaves of bread and a ham, and she had it all tied in a bed sheet. It's the only way she could carry it.
Sure.
So she'd feed this boy, and he'd run after Rosie and help her take care of the kids.
So how long was he on the ship? 3 weeks or 2 weeks or a week or...
You was there. How long was you there?
What was it, 2 weeks?
I have heard
It
something.
seems to me as if they said
So they
it was
carried
a
all
month.
their food for the whole 2-week shot.
She had a cured ham and bread.
Yeah, baby.
So when Grandma got here with you three, you went right to Chicago.
Yeah, my mother, she landed in Ellis Island, and then from there she took the train for Chicago.
Did Grandpa go through Ellis Island also?
Oh, he had to.
Yeah.
He had to. That's the way all the immigrants came to America, by going through Ellis Island
And
there.
Grandpa hired a carriage and met them at the depot with horses and a buggy.
And then not only that, but my father, he was lucky again. These people, they wanted to move away. And they were renting this house, but they didn't want to take all the furniture with them. They were just taking just a few things that they wanted from the house. So my father bought everything else that they left in that house. And then when my mother came, well, he had a place for us.
A cottage, they call
In
it.
Detroit?
In Chicago.
Oh, in Chicago.
Yeah.
Now, how long did you live in Chicago about?
Well, I can remember a little about Chicago, so I must have been about maybe 4, 5.
So
And then
about
after they lived in Chicago, when Pa'd go to work and come home, Rosie'd look out and say, "That man's coming again. Here comes that man again."
Yeah.
She forgot.
Now, where did the Fierce come in? Did they come across too?
My mother's sister married in Europe, and then they came over and they stayed in Chicago with us all, because they didn't have no place to go to, so they stayed with us until he found a place for him and his wife.
Now, did anybody else? Was there an Uncle Joe or
He
another
came
brother?
later.
Oh, he came
Was
later.
that Grandpa's brother?
No, Ma's brother.
My mother's brother.
Were you still in Chicago when he came over, or were you on the farm then?
Well,
He must have been on the farm.
I don't remember him
Because he
coming.
came to the farm to visit us, and he stayed for quite a while. Then Uncle Joe went back to when he found out his mother was sick. Well, he went back to Chicago, and then he went back to Austria. And his mother died a day or two, or she was buried a day or two before he got there.
Now, when he was in Chicago, him and Sanborn got together and he created this roofing company.
Yeah, I think that's where it started.
Then he moved to Detroit
Yeah,
and still had both companies.
No,
How did
I
that
don't
work?
know anything about the Chicago business, but they carried on the roofing business in Detroit on Michigan Avenue, Michigan and 14th.
Correct? From where they built the Michigan Central Depot.
Yeah, that's where I learned how to spell Michigan, because the Michigan, it was Michigan Avenue, and the streetcar, they had streetcars at that time, and the word Michigan was on that streetcar. That's where I learned how to spell Michigan, was from them streetcars that went by.
How old were you when you left Detroit?
About 10
So you went to school, you started school.
in Detroit.
Did you speak English yet when you went to school?
No, we had to learn English in school. My folks couldn't speak English, and we always spoke German.
Did they speak
So
German
we went to a parochial school that was German and English.
Oh, so they spoke German in the school.
Yeah, and I think that's where we got our start.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with Lizzie, she was the oldest, and of course she picked it up sooner than Rosie and I. And then, of course, as we got to speak a little English, we spoke English between us kids. And but in the house, my father, we had to speak German in the house. And
You
I'm
spoke
glad
German? I
we
thought you
didn't.
spoke English in the house.
But then when I come along, they was learning English, and they always spoke English, so I didn't get too much German. And then they bawled me out because I didn't know my German.
Now, did Grandpa fall off a roof or something and hurt himself?
In Chicago, that was in Chicago, I'm quite sure. He fell off the roof. And, well, he wasn't,
He broke some ribs.
oh, well, he was lucky he didn't break a leg or two.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why he wanted to get out of the roofing business, because, you know, it was getting a little bit too much for him to go up that ladder with a roll of roofing on his shoulder. And
But
he
he
knew
did that in Chicago.
that, I think, when he fell off
Uh-huh.
the ladder.
But then he went to Detroit and started another business.
I always understood he fell off a ladder in Detroit.
Well,
Oh, okay.
wherever. But
Little
anyway, he
discrepancy
fell.
here.
Anyway, it fell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the story about the farm now? You said you met somebody who wanted to...
No,
Lizzie.
my sister Lizzie, met this girl that went to the same school Lizzie went to. This was this parochial school. And this girl told my sister that her folks had a farm in Gladwin and they wanted to sell it. So then, of course, Lizzie, she came home and she told Ma and Pa, her name was Julia, and Julia's folks had a farm in Gladwin, and my father was interested in getting into some other line of work. And I guess that's when he decided farming would be it. So he got in touch with Julia's folks, and they talked it over, and Pa went to Gladwin. And all that was on that farm was just a small house, not even a barn.
Would that be about 1912?
About, I guess that's
Well, how old was you, Ma, when you moved?
me.
Oh, Ma.
I was born in November, and they moved out here in April,
Oh.
November of what year, Aunt Bertha?
1912.
So you moved here on April Fool's Day then? To
Yeah.
Gladwin.
1913, yeah.
Yeah.
Grandma was
So what do you remember about the trip from Detroit to Gladwin? How did you get there? By train?
By
or?
train. Oh, yes, and it took all day. Oh, no, we left at Detroit in the afternoon, and we spent all night in Pinconning. And Albert was just running around. And Albert, Lizzie took Albert and Walter, I guess, for a walk. We spent the night in the depot there in Pinconning, and it was just a little old depot.
Well, if you were 10, how old was Albert?
Oh, well, Walter's 5 years younger than I am, so Walter was 5. So Albert was only about 2, maybe going on 3.
Oh, gosh.
And there was a little ice. There was some water that had.
And I was just so many months old.
Yeah. And so somehow Albert walked on this ice, and he slipped and fell, broke the ice, and he got wet. And so my mother had to go. And I guess by that time, I guess the stores were open, because we spent the night in the depot. And my mother had to go to this dry goods store and buy a whole outfit, underwear and everything for Albert. So my mother had, everything was packed up.
So how'd you get from Pinconning then to...
By train. We had to wait for the Gladwin train.
Okay.
And then somehow we got to Gladwin, and Mike Baum met us at the depot with his horse and wagon. And I can still remember his horse's name was Mary.
Yeah.
Now, who was Mike Baum?
Well, he was our neighbor that lived a mile away from our place. See, my father hadn't bought, he was in Gladwin already waiting for us, but he hadn't bought any no supplies, no nothing, no horses or cows or anything. And then...
Charlie was always ahead, kind of waiting for everybody, wasn't he?
Well, it's a good thing. He made the start for us. And he waited for us, and then, of course, Mike Brown brought us all over to the house.
That little house that was...
That little house, but it wasn't on the prairie.
Where was it on the property? I don't remember.
Remember the old house?
That you used to live in?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, that wasn't, but that other part that was built on later.
Oh, I see.
That
That's the
wasn't
original
there.
house that was there.
Yeah.
That's on Rosie's place
Yeah.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. Now, who owned that before you guys moved there?
Stutzman's. My father bought the farm from Fred Stutzman's father. And,
Rosie married Fred after Bill died.
yeah.
That's right, yeah.
And,
Did they buy all of that they have now? Or
yeah,
is
and then
there?
my father bought some more land to bring it up to 120 acres.
And then you started cutting it down and cutting the
Yeah,
trees out. Was
yeah.
the trees and everything still there, or was it just...
Oh, there's just a little clearing on the west side of the house and a little bit on the east side, that's all. Everything else was woods. You know where Grandpa's barn is now?
Mhm.
That was in the woods.
What kind of road did they have out? Is that the end of the road?
Just a one-track road, a dirt road.
And you were at the end of the road?
No,
That's
not
right.
exactly. No, the road went on down to almost 30, I think. I think it went down almost to 30, but it was just a one-track road.
Now, how did you make a living there that you know, you got all trees, and obviously you don't have any animals?
They had to buy everything we ate. There were 6 of us kids, my mother and father.
Well, they got cows.
Yeah, then later on, Pa bought the first cow he bought from Bill Nettleton's father, a Hereford cow and the calf.
Now, where'd you put it if you didn't have a barn, or did you build
Well,
a barn?
it had a shed on it.
Oh, I
It
see.
wasn't really a barn. It was
Shed
just
on the back of the house.
Yeah, in back of the house. And so they put the cow in there. And then, in the meantime, my father put up a barn, and then he bought horses, and then he had to buy all the other supplies.
That wasn't the barn you got now, though, was
No,
it?
no.
Just a little. How did you get that big barn put up? Did all the neighbors come in, or how?
Well, yeah,
barn
when they did the
raising.
barn raising.
Grandpa went back to Detroit, then worked at Ford's for $5 a day.
He worked at Ford's?
Mhm.
$5 a day.
What did he do at Ford? Do you know? Was it mechanic? Or?
He was, took care of the furnaces. My father was a stonemason. He learned to trade in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what he did. He made the furnaces, or repaired the furnaces, or he made them, I don't know, at Ford's.
Well, it must have been Ford just must have been opening then. They must have just been getting started.
But see, he worked at Ford's when I was married, and he boarded with us. When Jack and I got married, he boarded with us.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe he went back a couple of times.
But he went back there and earned enough money to build the barn in 1926. The barn was built. The new barn.
He didn't have any Ford stock, did he?
No.
So he came back and got enough money to build the barn, so he built the barn.
The barn raising and all the people and the husbands and wives and all their kids, they came and we have fixed tables outside and everybody helped with the meal.
So how long did it take
And
to
old
put...
Mr. Shedd cut all the timbers for that barn.
Were they off the property?
What?
Where'd you get the timbers from? Did you cut them from that?
Oh, he bought it at the lumber yard. He must have.
Well, them timbers, and they used wood pegs to set a nail.
Well, how could Grandpa afford this? Where was his
Well,
income?
see, when he sold, I guess, when he sold his share, Grandpa and Grandma were very saving. When we lived in Detroit, you know, Grandpa worked there at the roofing when he was a roofer. Well, they saved their money. And then when I guess he sold his share of the business to Mr. Sanborn, so he had a little money.
And no taxes in those days.
And he bought his cows and horses and wagons and cultivators and all the implements that he needed. He bought and paid cash for.
But he didn't sell milk or grain or anything in order to get a little capital somewhere along the line.
We had to clear the land first. And
Grandma went out too and worked.
Oh yes, Grandma. I can remember when my mother would go out, my father would dynamite the stumps. There was a lot of stumps on the place, and he'd dynamite them. Then you had to go around, pick up all the roots, put them on a pile, and then when they had a great big pile, then my father would set that on fire. And that's how he had to clear the land. And, you know, it was a slow process. It was all by hand. And just the family, whoever could help, had to help. And my mother went out and helped with my father, and I can remember Lizzie carrying Bertha over to where my mother was working so my mother could nurse Bertha.
Oh.
And then Lizzie would take Bertha back into the house
When
again.
I quit bawling, they take me to the house.
This was really pioneering, you might say, because all we lacked was the Indians and the wolves that didn't come howling at our door. But everything else was, the wood pile was outside, the toilet was outside, the water was outside. You had to go out and get it and bring it in, and then when you were through with it, take it back out again.
What thing do you remember most about that time?
All the work,
All the...
all the hard work.
Milk all them cows.
And Bertha didn't have to do anything because she was too small to do anything at the time.
Well, as she got older, she helped. She had to help too.
I had to cultivate, follow that old white horse all day.
What was the horse's name?
Dolly.
That's the one that kicked you?
No,
No.
that was a neighbor's horse.
That was a western horse, that one of the neighbor's horses that kicked me. Sent me sailing through the air with the greatest of ease. And Grandpa took me to town on horse and buggy to the doctor, 4 miles.
Made the horse run, I guess, all the way. And my father never made the horses run all that much before. When he'd let them walk a ways, and then, well, come on, giddy up, and let them go on a slow trot, and then they'd walk, and then after a while, well, come on, giddy up, and then they'd run a little bit on a slow trot, and so...
Didn't the neighbor assume any responsibility for the horse kicking Aunt Bertha?
No,
No, nothing.
nothing.
That was perfectly
The boy,
right.
the boy should have watched the horses, and he got a good licking for.
He got slapped in the face.
Oh,
That's
no.
all.
Oh.
I remember his father coming out of the house, and when they heard that commotion, you know, and us kids were all out in the yard, and that man left the horses in the wagon set right in the middle of the yard where us kids were playing, and he knew that horse was a kicker, and but he left the boy there. The boy was supposed to watch the horse, and the boy was only about as old as I was, about 12 years old at that time, I guess. And
Well, somebody coaxed you to go in the barn and see the colts.
yeah, so
We had a lot of colts in there. You could run under them and all around, and they was all tame, you know. Our horses never bothered the kids.
but
They bothered you, though.
yeah.
Now, later on, did Walter go back to Detroit to work, or how was that?
Oh yeah, he went to Detroit. He must have been about 17, 18
Yeah, I
when
think
he
he
went
was
to Detroit to
17.
work. And he went to my house, and boarded with.
Were you living in Detroit at that
Yeah.
time?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I see. Now, when did the oil boom hit about down in there?
Bert, you remember more about that?
We were in Flint.
Oh, you were in.
Were
Flint.
you off the farm then, too? Oh, I thought that the big thing happened, the big oil boom happened when you guys were still kids.
No.
Maybe about maybe 1940.
No, I was married. I was married then, and I was living at
40, I
Flint.
think a little before that.
Before 1940?
Because we lived in Flint. You were born 1940. Then we'd come up to Gladwin when we'd hear the oil wells a pumping and a
Yes.
pumping.
Yeah.
All night long.
So the family came over, they went to Chicago, worked in Chicago, went to Detroit, stayed in Detroit a while, and then migrated to Gladwin.
Yeah.
Or it stayed.
It's just a good thing that farm wasn't way up in Gaylord or up on the Upper Peninsula.
Maybe it would have been better.
Oh, I
It was
don't
right
know.
there in that sand hill. They couldn't even grow a disturbance.
Who got the spanking for Aunt Bertha getting kicked by the horse?
Peppy.
Me.
Peppy did.
Me.
Sorry, Doc.
And Grandpa hit me so hard. It wasn't my fault.
No.
So you ran the horse all the way to town with Ma, huh?
No, Lizzie.
Lizzie held me.
Held Bertha
Where was Grandma?
at home.
She was probably hysterical.
No, you know, my folks were not emotional people, and I'm not either.
I'm not either.
And no, the only time I saw my mother cry, I shouldn't even say it, but it's the truth. When one of our horses died.
I've seen her cry.
And well, I didn't, but this one time I saw her. We were both in the barn, and that poor horse was laying on the floor in the barn and breathing her last. And you know, horses were expensive at that time.
Oh.
And
You got attached to them too, same as any pet.
Sure.
Yeah. All our cows had names, and they all had their own name.
What was their names?
Oh, one was Molly. Our first cow was Bossy. We called her Bossy.
The horses' names was Flory and Lucy.
Yeah.
So where'd they get the names?
I don't know.
No, Flory was the young one,
Florrie and Lucy was two horses they had when I was.
Yeah, but,
Wasn't there always a
there was
Maggie?
Lucy.
There was a
There was a Maggie at one time. Too.
Lucy and Maggie, I think those were our first two horses. And then Maggie, Maggie died.
Maggie's
That's the one that where Ma died, where Ma cried. And then they got another horse, because they had to have a team. And then they got
Florrie.
Florrie was Lucy's daughter.
Oh.
Yeah, but Pa raised Florrie from a colt.
Oh.
Yeah. And we made a pet of her too, you know. When we lived in the old house, they had a porch on the east side of the house. And we all made a pet of that colt. And we'd give her sugar. We'd run in the house and get a handful of sugar. And of course, and that horse, she got so that, you know, she knew. And one time Ma was in the house and she heard a noise outside and she opened the door. And there the horse was going up on there's only about 2 steps up onto the porch. And Ma said she didn't know what she was going to do, but anyway, she backed the horse back up, and it was a colt, but she was pretty well grown. And she backed her up and got her out in the yard.
I heard a story once that there was a chicken hawk that was raiding the chickens and Grandma went out and shot it. Is that right?
Yeah, she was sailing, that hawk was sailing around, I can remember that. And my mother took the gun and she shot that hawk and come sailing down and she nailed it up on the corn crib.
Now, where was Grandpa while this was
Oh,
going?
he was working in Detroit. Or maybe he was in Saginaw. One time I think he did work in Saginaw. And Papa wasn't home.
When did you see Grandma crying at Bertha?
Oh, that's another story.
That's another
Oh, we
story.
don't want to talk about it. All
We
right.
don't want to talk about
Oh,
that.
all right. Okay.
And I know one time, well, you know, you had to kill your own chickens if you wanted to have a chicken dinner.
Oh, sure.
So Grandma went out to kill a chicken. And, you know, you had to have its feathers and legs together at one time and drape its neck across the chopping block and hit it. And Grandma had the chicken all draped across it, had the hatchet all raised up, and the chicken looked up and said, quack, 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 and Grandma let it go. She says, that chicken talks to me. Oh, she couldn't kill it.
Sure, that poor chicken said, don't kill me.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So we didn't have chicken that day.
Now, when you guys were there, you were riding back and forth to the ancestors back in Austria before the war and during the
My mother
war?
always corresponded with her sisters, yeah.
So what did they say? Did they say anything about the war when it was going on? And
Hey, the letters were censored, I think. So, and then for a while, I think they didn't hear from them for a while. And then, of course, after a while, the letters start coming.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got electricity in the village, well, that was something new, and they was getting, now their homes are all modern, same as ours.
I think it's
And
pretty
their
exciting.
style. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it was pretty exciting when we got electricity in Gladwin.
Well, yeah.
Oh, I was ironing that day when we had the house wired for electricity. And then when they came, of course, when Pa built the new house, he had it wired right then, you know, for electricity. So when they came to take care of that, why, they took care of Ma's first, you know, and she had electric, and I was ironing, and I had to heat the irons on the cook stove. And so then they connected the wires, so I had electricity. And I was so glad to get rid of them old irons. And I had electric iron that I had brought from Detroit, and I brought that out. And from that time on, I used electric iron.
Well, how did you curl your hair back then before you had electric? You had curlers or
curling
something?
iron, we put it and drape it over the lamp, the chimney of the lamp, the kerosene lamp. And when it got hot, you tested on a piece of paper first to see if the paper burned. Sure. If the paper didn't burn, then you curl
Well, didn't that get sooty from the...
No.
It didn't from the kerosene?
No.
Or did you use kerosene?
No,
Yeah.
because your lamps didn't get all sooty. You know,
chimneys.
kerosene lamps.
Chimneys
No, the
would
chimneys
get...
did. Once, if it didn't burn right, once in a while, it would...
Oh, yeah, they get black,
but
it didn't hurt the curling iron any.
I thought that would get black and it get soot on your hair.
No,
That's
no.
why you all have black hair.
Betty's must got burned here in red.
Yeah, I know. Oh, good.
oh, by that time, why?
Yeah.
When they built the house, the new house, who was living there then? Or what time frame was the new house built?
We were in Detroit when the new, see, the
Oh,
oil.
you had already moved out?
Oh, well, we were living in Detroit, Jimmy, and I don't, what year did they build the house?
I don't know.
Do you think, was I born? Maybe in,
Oh, yeah,
maybe 1940?
Larry was born in 40,
The house was there when my father died.
and he died on Larry's first birthday.
And Larry was born in 1940.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jack, your father died in 1940.
41.
41.
Oh, yeah, 1941, but your father was 40 years old. He would have been 41 that November, but he died in July.
Mm-hmm. Because I know, I'd washed my hair and I just baked a cake for Larry's birthday. And the telephone rang and I went to the telephone and somebody called and said Jack had
Who
died.
called you?
I don't remember who called, whether it was Lizzie from Bay City or who, I don't remember. And then we were drilling a well at the time, and we had all them cattle out there, and we had, I don't know how many cows that had to be watered every day, so Dad couldn't come to the funeral, and we drove to Fenton. Bill was working in Fenton then, and Josephine and Marvin, I think, and Bill, and Larry and I rode up with them. And we had, I don't know how many flat tires from
Those were the happy days.
Oh, yeah.
You had more than one flat tire?
Oh, yeah. They just had an old broken down car, and then I rode back to Detroit back to Flint with Barbies.
Oh, yeah. See, and the roads were nearly all dirt roads. I can remember when we lived in Detroit, and we would come to Gladwin, out of Pontiac, I think is where the pavement ended. From there on, it was gravel all the way.
And then after the funeral, Barbies went back, and I guess Bill and them was going to stay a little longer, whatever. Well, we had a carload, all of us.
Sure.
And so Barbie said they'd take us because we lived on Bristol Road then, and that was just like 3 miles off on Dixie Highway. So they brought me home, and it was just dark when we got home. Lights all on the house, the doors wide open. Dad and Jim wasn't there. They had gone to the store to buy something for their supper.
Who's Barbies?
They were
Josie's
our
friends.
neighbors in Detroit.
Friends of Josie's.
One of my earliest recollections of the farm was you guys were going to town in an old kind of a Ford pickup.
Yeah, I taught her how to drive.
And there was always an argument about who's going to pay for the gas.
There was.
No.
And it seemed like we came home and we went to turn the corner.
No, we never had
No, we never had an argument for gas. It was to tell her probably to step on the gas. Josie was learning how to drive, and she was.
Jack didn't want me to learn how to drive.
Did you drive in the ditch or something coming home, or into the missed the
From
driveway?
I missed the driveway, and we bought some eggs, and I don't know how many of them were.
What was that? We was either crossing the bridge there, or we was going into the cemetery, and you was going too fast to turn. I said, step on the gas, you can make it.
No, we were going to the cemetery. And you know, before you get to the cemetery, you go up a kind of a
little hill.
Just a little of a hill, and I had to step on the gas to get up on the hill there. And then right there was the gate to turn into the cemetery. So I said to Bert, "Can I make it?" She said, "Sure." And I turned the wheel, and you and Betty and Richard were in the back seat, in the back of the truck. The back of the truck. And oh golly,
Just went to roll.
I bet we just missed that post by inches. Well, they
You made it.
say a miss is as good as a mile.
There you go.
You should have known not to listen to that.
I made it.
See, I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Did Grandpa ever drive?
No,
He tried it once.
and Albert was going to help him, show him how. And then when Pa was trying to learn how to drive, he got near the driveway, and I guess he realized he was going a little too fast, and he hollered, "Ho, ho, ho!" And Albert grabbed the wheel then. And
You had the emergency brake here, you had a clutch here, and the gas and spark was up on the steering wheel, and then the reverse was in the center. You want to back up, you had to step on here and around. And if you
Had to do what? And there was a foot pedal for reverse?
Yeah, I'm sure there was. And anyway, the emergency was here if you had to stop in a hurry. You pulled the
What kind of
emergency
car
brake.
was it?
Model T.
Ford?
Ford.
Well, that's got a gear shift, I thought.
Not then. The spark and the gas is up here. If you want to go faster, you just pull this lever down a little bit, and she'd chug along a little faster. Then if it spit and sputtered, you give it a little more spark. And away it go.
Yeah, and then a pickup truck I had, the door, the catch didn't always hold. You always had to watch that, and so in case it would fly open, that you wouldn't fall out.
Didn't you guys just take the battery out of the car and take it in the house so you could listen to the radio or something?
No,
Yes,
no.
we did.
Oh,
yes, we
well,
did.
no, when I did it was because we had zero weather, and I was afraid that the battery wouldn't start up if I wanted to go to town the next day. So that's why I brought
But
the
you
battery.
wasn't around there then. Albert and I were home. Albert would go out and get the car, the battery, and take it in and hook the radio up to the battery.
Didn't you run the battery down a couple of times listening to the radio?
One time, Albert had 2 batteries in the house, and there was this program on that Grandma wanted to watch, and Albert was out milking cows. And I said, oh, there's nothing to it. Mom, let's just clamp it on here. And boy, we had no we just radio. Oh, we had nice reception. Al come in and says, oh my God, what are you going to do? You're going to bring that radio up there. I shouldn't have had it. I had it on both batteries somehow or another. Whatever I done was wrong. We just needed one battery.
But it improved your reception, all right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, but I had for our radio, I had a regular radio battery, not for the car.
Yeah,
But I would bring the battery in when we have zero weather, and so that it wouldn't freeze up or whatever a battery does in cold weather. Oh, put that on somebody else.
Oh, Mother, that's
Oh,
nice.
poor Diane, where'd she go?
Oh, she's hiding around the
She
corner.
fell asleep.
I don't know where Diane went to. I think she's hiding around the corner there somewhere.
We cut her right out entirely.
Yeah, put it on this. There's that old lady again.
Is it running now?
I don't know. I think it's on pause.
Well, if it were running, wouldn't the wheels be going around?
Yeah, it's recording.
There.
Diane,
Yeah.
picture now.
I can't see that the wheels are going around.
You gotta punch the button now to get it going.
There we go. Now we're live. There we are. We're in business.
We're on live, part 2.
Yeah.
Now, Diane, you say something.
Tell us about the pig story.
Oh, I don't know that story.
Come on, Ma, you know the story.
Well, I don't know it accurately. Anyway, pigs cut out, and Grandpa and Albert was trying to corral these pigs. And Grandpa was standing there trying to shoe the pig, and the pig come along and ran right between Grandpa's legs, and he's riding on the pig backwards. Matter no doubt.
Don't change the focus.
Well, how did that end? Did he fall off or?
I don't know. Albert knew it. Albert was there. Albert laughed so hard when he tells it that you can hardly understand it.
What other stories were on the farm?
How about your crow?
Oh, yeah, well, they had a pet crow.
All the silver or
And
whatever.
he'd go from one fence, when he'd know it was time for his kids to go to school, he'd go from one fence post to the other. And then we'd always pet him in the back of his head, and we'd say, hello. Well, finally he got so he'd say, how? And then one beautiful day, a farmer was coming along, and he got bounty for him, 25 cents a head. And he seen this man coming with a team of horses, so he went from one fence post to the other, way down to meet him. And the guy seen the crow, and he ran over, and the crow was tame, and fly away, and then grabbed him and wrung his neck right there. The upper neck right there, his stuff.
Is it the same one that used to take the things from your house?
Yeah, the crow. He used anything shiny. He'd come in the house, and he'd pick it up, and it'd disappear. And Ma would think whoever was the last visiting took it. Or some. And kind of blamed Mr. Menzel. We couldn't find it, so one day we were cleaning house and we had all the windows open. And Mr. Crow came in, flew over on a dresser, and he'd take his bill and flip things around, he found whatever he wanted, picked up something, so we said, we'll watch him. Out the window he went, and down the garden by a fence post. He was busy working away there, so we went over. All the things that had disappeared was there.
Menzel, didn't Mr. Menzel run a little moonshine?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't she go downtown with her little basket and
Uh-huh.
sell them their wares?
That's right. Nobody suspected her. She had a little tea towel in her basket.
So what happened during the Prohibition era? What
Well,
stories you have of that?
They got arrested and then they
No, I mean the other. Wasn't there a speakeasy or no? Maybe not a speakeasy. Wasn't there right next to the White Star? Wasn't there a dance hall there?
across the road, Leo's.
Was that Leo's?
Leo had a dance hall there.
Was it every Friday night they had a dance or Saturday night or something?
Saturday night. Cost 50 cents to get in. And he had a band come and play, and everybody would go out and dance. Your dad and I done a good many a polka in that place.
This before or after you were married?
Both.
Both.
So what did Dad say to you to woo you off your feet when he first met you?
I'll never tell.
Being awful secretive here.
Yeah.
Well, there's some things it's better you don't tell.
True.
But didn't Betty have a crow too, or Richie?
Richard had a crow.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Now, how come you didn't believe me when I told you that Betty rode over me with a bicycle?
Well, I thought Betty was so innocent she'd never do a trick like that.
I never heard of such a thing.
That was terrible. That was just terrible.
Hold me down on the ground and ride over me with a bicycle.
I tell ya, I could
And a
never have
poor
done it
little
today.
helpless-
Oh, isn't that rotten? I just couldn't surprise it. Sarah, I couldn't get on the bicycle and ride it over anyhow, even if you were skinny as a...
You can blame it on Richard and Jim.
No, I was
No,
just
she's the one who
guilty.
drove over me.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't your brother and Richard?
No, they just rode up to me and
Oh.
stopped, but she
Oh.
didn't stop.
Oh,
She kept
I
going.
see. Oh, yeah.
They held me down.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have run over you, except my legs weren't long enough to backpedal to put the brakes on. So, it was just an accident, Larry.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
She
okay.
was participating in the fun to scare Larry.
Yes, that was terrible.
So what else? Anything about Rosie or Josie? Or not Rosie, but Rosie or Lizzie or...
Josie threw a rotten pickle at Waller, and he had his
Oh,
mouth.
yeah. My mother had us clean out the cellar. And my mother had a big crock of pickles that, towards the spring, we didn't eat them fast enough, and so they got a little soft. So we had to get that, clean that crock out. And we had that crock outside, and Walter did something, or said something to me that made me mad, and he got such a kick out of it. He stood there with his mouth wide open and laughing. And I just reached in that crock, and I took out a pickle, and I threw it, and I hit him right square in his mouth. He had his mouth wide open, laughing. But I'll tell you, he changed his tune after that. Then I ran.
Now, didn't Walter tease you guys a lot?
Yeah, oh, Walter, he liked to do that.
Albert was your savior or something?
Albert would always step in and
Helped you out.
yeah, he did.
Those were the days.
Wasn't there a rumor when you shucked the corn, if you had a colored ear of corn, you had to kiss somebody or something?
Oh, that was some people in some
Oh, you guys didn't do
areas.
that?
No. The only one that shucked corn was us kids, and we wasn't about to kiss each other.
Well,
That
Richie,
goes way back.
well, Richie lost his fingers in that corn thing, didn't he?
Yeah.
And there,
Yeah, Jack, we went over to my folks, they gave us a little patch of potatoes that they had planted. That was supposed to be for us. So we were going to go there and hold the potatoes. And so Jack, after we were through, Jack went into the barn because my father had all them pigeons and he didn't want to raise too many young ones. So he always said, told Jack, well, go on up there and up in the barn loft, up there where my father had put some boxes up in there for the pigeons to have their nests. And so Jack went up there and he got some pigeons and squabs, I should say. And then Richard followed. And then I guess Jack was already down from getting the pigeons. when Richard had turned that handle and he put his hand in there, and the gears, they crushed his fingers. And then he carried him out of the barn, and I just had on just an old house dress with an apron, and I just took that apron and I put it over his hand because I didn't want to look at it. I was afraid I'd pass out if I'd see that. And I wrapped his hand in it, and Jack said, well, gee, we'll have to take him to the doctor right now. And I said, take my father's car. My father had that Dodge. I said, that'll go a lot faster than our car. So he did. And my folks were working in the field, and they saw us go down the road with their car because they didn't know what was wrong. And so we took him to Balmer. Well, Balmer was only a family doctor. He was no surgeon, and he said he can't do that kind of work, that we'd have to take him to Clare. And so Jack, we didn't know how to get to Clare. So Jack saw these couple of fellows standing on the corner, so I guess Jack knew them, and he said, do you know how to get to the Clare Hospital? So they said yes. So he said, well, get in. So they got in the car with us, and I held Richard in the front seat, and Jack was driving, and Richard screamed nearly all the way to Clare. He'd only stop once in a while just to get his breath, and then he screamed again. But Dr. Balmer did wrap up his hand, so that then we got there, and Jack only had on his old overalls, you know, just to hold the garden there, hold the potatoes. So we weren't really dressed up, and we weren't expecting something like that. So then he left me there in the hospital, and the doctor wasn't in. He had another fellow there taking care of anybody that would come in the office. The doctor was someplace fishing, so they called him. So this the fellow that was there, he must have known something about medicine because he kind of unwrapped that gauze that Dr. Balmer had put on Richard's hand, and of course then the doctor came, and then the doctor took over, and so Jack had to go back home. He didn't have a penny in his pocket, and he had to go back home and then he got dressed up, and I told him to bring another dress or two for me, and it's a good thing I had my shoes on, that I wasn't barefoot. And so I stayed there in the hospital, and I slept at the foot of the bed, of Richard's bed. Well, and then when Jack came, well then of course we took care of everything, and the doctor took care of Richard, and like I said, I slept on the foot of his bed.
How long was he there?
Well, a couple of days, and then when the doctor said he thinks he's got to amputate them fingers. And I said, try and save them if you can. I said, give them a chance. I said, if you can't save them, well, then of course we have no choice. But I said, if you think there's a chance of saving them, I'd like to have them saved. So he did for a couple of days. Then he told me, well, he's got to take them off. He said, they're turning black. So I said, well, you know what you have to do. So he took them fingers off. And then we rented a room across the road from the hospital. So Richard and I, we had our meals at a restaurant, and by that time he didn't have to stay in bed. You know, he could walk around. And but the doctor had to look at his hand. Oh, I just can't remember. Once a day for sure, if not twice. And then when Richard got better, his hand got better to where we could go home. Well, then we went home.
How old was Richard?
He started school then, that fall, so he was only about 5, maybe 6. No, I think he was about 5. See, his birthday was in November, and I think he was 5 when this happened.
Must have been rather traumatic for Richard.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear the pig story.
You what?
Did you tell a pig story? Oh, you did tell. Okay. I was the cameraman. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
But you know the funniest thing with them pigeons in the barn, Grandpa's hands hurt too hard he couldn't milk the cows. But he could climb that ladder, clear up the hay mow, way up to where them pigeons were, and didn't hurt his hands at all.
What are you trying to say, Ma? Come right out. Quit beating around the bush here.
So was your mom a good cook? Oh yeah, what kind of good things did she
Hey,
make special?
strudel.
Tell us one of her recipes. How did she give you a recipe?
Just
Oh,
watching
I
her.
got that recipe on the wall. You read it, haven't you, Betty?
It's cute.
It is. It's so much flour, so much schmaltz, and so much of this, and then you mix the whole thing together.
Yeah. She wrote the way she pronounced it.
Yeah.
But my mother had a nice handwriting.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, she used to write the news of Little Town. At first, well, I had it for a while, and then after I left home, then there wasn't anybody. You was too small, and so Ma took over, and she wrote it. And of course, she wrote just the way it sounded like. But she had a nice handwriting, and I'm sure they didn't have any trouble reading her writing.
Yeah, so Mr. So-and-so sow had 6 pigs, and she had everything in the paper.
Well, that's the way they did years
Yeah.
ago.
And it was news. It was
Yeah.
good news to any farmer.
How many years was Grandpa on the school board?
He wasn't. His name was on it, but Grandma done all the
But
work.
Grandma did all the work, yeah.
And was Grandpa always just the treasurer, or did he hold another office?
Treasurer. As far as I know, yeah.
And Grandma done all the work?
Oh,
Grandma done
all the
all the
years,
work.
all the years.
Took the books in at the end of the year to the superintendent and the county superintendent.
And
And
who
he-
was that?
To George Taylor that one time, and he says, "Oh, I love to see you come because your books are perfect."
Yeah.
He said, "I have no problem with your books. They balance right to the penny, every bit. But some of them were so messed up that it was hard
And
to."
what was that lady's name? That was a school,
Mrs. Shell,
Mrs. Ayers?
Mrs. Ayers,
What was she,
she was also superintendent now.
at the
County.
school?
County.
Yeah, and, of course, Ma had to take care of the school books that she
Mhm.
had to look after.
Uh-huh.
And, she said she never had any trouble reading
Mhm.
Ma's writing.
Okay.
Well, how many years did Grandma write for the local newspaper, the Gladwin Record? How
Oh,
many
golly,
years
for
would
years.
you guess?
Because I gave it up when I went to Detroit to work when I was 16. And from that time on, Grandma took over.
See, I was only 6 years. She's 10 years older than I am, so I was only 6 when you were 16.
And so, for years and years, Grandma wrote it.
Mhm. And then they got so they used to furnish the stationery and then the
And the
envelopes and the stamps. Then it got so they quit doing this. They quit doing that. Then after a while, Grandma got just too old to.
It got to be too much for her,
Yeah.
you know.
Grandma was never a teacher or anything, was she?
No.
No.
But they had to learn where they went to school. That teacher was hired for life. And you had to mind. And I remember Pa talking, we was writing, we'd write like with our fingers all up there. He said the teacher would come along with a ruler and hit him on the finger. They had to learn to write. Pa's handwriting wasn't so good.
Oh, and my mother said, this teacher was married, and he had a big family. And she says, when he'd come in the schoolhouse, she says, we always could tell if he was in a good mood or not. She said, if he'd come in the school and his mouth was in a straight line, we knew we had to watch ourselves. And then again, other times, if he come in with a smile on his face, well, then they could have a little fun. He wasn't all that strict then.
Well, didn't somebody next to the school you were at set off a case of dynamite in the middle of the field or something? Who was it did that?
John Sandula, 1/4 of July. I think Manius, somebody from Detroit was up visiting, and they wanted to sleep in the haymow, in the old barn, up in the haymow. And John Sandula had, I don't know, it was a whole case or half a case of dynamite, and he went on the Little Town Road, a little ways from the school, maybe
Young
a quarter.
John or the old one?
Young John.
Oh.
And he dug a hole, he put that in and set it off. And whoever was visiting us was sleeping out in the barn that night. he said sand just, he thought at first it was raining, I guess. Of course, he heard the boom, and then all this sand.
coming down.
Yeah.
So do you have to go fill that in later for the farmer?
I don't remember what happened.
Where was it they set the dynamite off? Over by the little town school?
Yeah, south school. Somewhere in
It's
that
one
way.
who didn't break the windows in some of the school.
I don't remember, but I know that.
I never heard that.
Well, you was probably in Detroit at
Yeah,
that time.
yeah.
There's Dinah, baby.
There she
There.
is. There she is. Right there.
Now you tell straight.
I don't have any about your family.
What famous words did Larry say to you when he was wooing you?
Well, he said you lived in a little log cabin with no heat or what? No water, no telephone,
Oh.
and that you had to climb the fire.
And you were so impressed with that?
Well, no, I just was really gullible.
I was just testing her out, see if she really loved me.
And here we still are, right?
25 years later.
I had to climb that hill to answer the phone.
Right.
Oh.
No, the fire tower, where the fire watch guy was. She says, well, you must have phone because you talked to your mother. And I said, well, no. At a certain time, my mother climbs up that big fire tower, and then I call there, and that's how I get a hold of her.
Then when you were getting there, we was out there a week before the wedding, and we went to either Knott's Berry Farm or Disneyland, and they had this old cabin, miner's cabin, resurrected there, and with an old bed, and Diane said, "This is what I thought you lived in."
Well, she said she had moved to a log cabin. That was okay, but we had to have indoor plumbing.
Oh,
I said, well, we really couldn't do that because the neighbors would think we're putting on air. So
Oh,
we
my.
really couldn't do that.
What, Larry?
Yes.
Them was the days, huh?
Well, Betty, what else you got? We're running out here.
Well, Gal, I had
We're running out of
something. I had something I wanted everyone to talk about, but I wanted to wait until you finished your subject, and now I've forgotten what it was. It had to do with Grandma and writing the. How far in school did Grandma and Grandpa go?
6th grade.
6th grade. Doesn't it?
I think 6th or 7th. 6th.
Six.
It was compulsory for all the kids to go to school until they went through the 6th grade. Then after they were through that, well, that was it.
And their 6th grade was better than our 8th.
Well, wasn't
They had to learn.
your mother really well read in the Bible? Because she
Yeah.
had talked about all the...
You had to learn every bit in the Bible.
That was a parochial school. And sure, they had Bible class, sure.
Well, I think it's kind of remarkable that you had parents who immigrated here to America who could not speak the language, who had to learn the language after they arrived here, raised 6 children, became a writer for the local weekly newspaper, was the treasurer for the school board, and I think interviewed school teachers, as I recall, and hired them, and maybe in some cases fired them if they needed to be. They held, positions of responsibility in the community and in the church. And I think you should just be so very proud of your grandparents. I am so grateful that they did
About going to church, I have to speak now while I think of it. Years ago, we went to Secord to go to church there. And then later on, or the wagon.
Yeah.
And then in the wintertime, of course, we didn't go. And then that minister, he only came there, I think it was every other Sunday or in the afternoon, whenever he could. And then later on, that Presbyterian church that was across from Markle's in Gladwin, you remember the Markle store? Well, the church there, they let the Lutherans have their services on a Sunday afternoon because they had their services in the morning, and so they let us use the church for Sunday afternoon. And my mother and I, we would walk the 4 miles sometimes.
Now, didn't Grandpa help build the church in town?
Yeah, then later on.
And when we had services at the Seaford Church, well, we had a young preacher that angled her when Waller was confirmed. And he had a shine on your mother, but your mother had a shine on your dad. He stopped in there once and wanted to know how Josephine was, and he was in Detroit. I don't know whether you got married already. I'm telling tales out of school, Betty.
Well, I didn't know this.
I don't think your mother knew it either, but he was kind of shining around there.
Well, then,
he was just a young fellow too, you know,
What-
starting out.
Was it Reverend Britsky that married you and Uncle Steve, Aunt Bertha?
No,
on
we
the
was
farm?
married. No, we were married at Wagerville parsonage. What was her name? Margaret Nash. What lady married us?
She did, I didn't know that.
I think her name was Margaret
At the
Nash.
Wagerville Lutheran Church?
No.
Methodist.
Oh, you were married now at Methodist Church. Why were you
Steve's
married?
mother was a Methodist, and she was a great friend of this, or I mean, she knew this Margaret Spence.
Oh, say, wasn't that Englander that came with, what was that minister's name up in Oberlin?
Sparked a little interest here.
What was his name? When Jack and Jack and I were engaged in September. Well, I worked in Detroit, and of course Jack lived in Detroit. That's where I got to know him. I met him at a dance. I might as well tell you that. And he asked me to dance, and I must tell you the start of that. This where I worked. I asked this lady if I could go out this night. I did housework, and this was on a Saturday night, and she says, yeah, they weren't going out, so I could go out, and there weren't any children in that family. I thought, well, I'm going to visit some people. My folks knew these people. They had land in Gladwin. And so I just got dressed up, just ordinary, just to go to visit these people. So when I got there, this lady and her sister-in-law was a widow, and the widow had a daughter just a little younger than I, and they were getting dressed up to go to a dance. So they asked me if I didn't want to go along. Well, I realized I wasn't dressed, to go to a dance, and I didn't want to go back to where I worked, so I thought, well, I'll go with them. And I can still remember I wore a midi and a skirt.
Oh, well, that was the style.
Well, but I wasn't dressed up.
Yeah.
If I'd known I was going to go to a dance, I would have dressed up a little better than that. And so I went with these ladies. We walked all the way over there, and the weather, it was a little slushy, and that was just before Lent started. And so we walked over to, on Michigan Avenue, we walked over to Michigan Avenue and down, I don't know how many blocks down we walked until, and this dance hall was above a garage. So we went up there, and of course the music was playing, and everybody was dancing and having a good time. And I had to wear rubbers because, like I said, it was slushy, wet. So when I got there, I knew I couldn't dance with them rubbers on my shoes, so I just took them off and I threw them back of the door. Maybe for all I know, they still might be there. Because I forgot to put them up when I went home.
Jack, she forgot all
Went
about it.
right off her feet, yeah.
Yeah, and then I danced with Jack, and then he asked me if he could take me home. So I said, sure.
Thought you never asked.
Yeah. No, I wasn't that bold. And so I told these ladies, well, I'm not going to go home with you. I got somebody else to take me home. So that was the start of that romance.
You owned what was the name of was it the Sportsman's Club in Wooden Shoe? Or what was the name of the bar that was there? Or the tavern or restaurant or whatever?
Jack's Tavern. The one that we had?
Yeah.
Jack's Tavern.
Was it always Jack's Tavern?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. When Betty Yeager had it, it was something else. And then they changed it.
Well, it's hard telling what
Was that
Betty named it.
Didn't she make a restaurant out of it?
Yeah, it was a restaurant then, and then some people had it, and they had this rotisserie, and then they'd have
Oh, yeah.
Pepins, I think it was.
Pepins, yeah.
Pepins.
Mm-hmm.
They had chicken and barbecued ribs. Oh, they
Well,
and then their business deteriorated.
Yeah.
well, when you had the tavern, did you have cabins to rent?
Three. We only had 3 cabins.
3 cabins, and did you rent boats and fishing
Mhm.
equipment too? And then did you tell me fish fries like on Friday nights?
We had it on Thursday nights because other people had it on Friday. So Jack said, well, we'll have it Thursday. He said, those that want to eat fish on Thursday, they can come to our place, and if they want to eat fish on Friday, well, they can eat Thursday and Friday too if they want. But we had it on, if we had it on Friday night, the other one had it Friday night, Rivers had it on Friday night, and then Leo, or not Leo, I think Ours, I think at that time Ours had their dance hall going.
I don't know.
And they had, I think they had fish fries too. He said, that it don't make sense, you know, all 3 of them had it on Friday. We'll have it on Thursday, so we had ours on Thursday night.
How many bars were in that area at that time?
Well, there's Jack's Tavern and Rivers, and then Leo's, and then Ours.
Oh,
Yeah.
That wasn't in the wooden shoe, though.
On 60 and 31 were 2 taverns, one across the road from the other one.
That was White Star and the Atomic Bar, as I remember. That was Leo? Leo owned that one?
At first.
Leo owned the Atomic.
Oh, he owned that whole thing, gas
And
station
he rented
and bar?
he rented the bar out to people.
Oh, I see. And then it burned down or something, didn't it? Later on?
They had a fire there?
We burnt the whole thing, Leo's place and everything.
Now, when you say Rivers, was that the wooden shoe?
Yeah.
Just a small building. Then
That's the one that moved up where the dewdrop is now.
Well, sounds like Stan Rivers really capitalized because Jack Waltman died.
Yeah. Then when Jack died, well, then of course I closed up. I never liked the tavern business in the first place.
No. Well, how about Aunt Bertha's meeting with Uncle Steve? Now that would be an interesting story to tell here. I've always wanted to know Aunt Bertha.
Oh, well.
Now it comes out.
No. Oh, when I turn my throat.
Done a drum roll there.
Well, you know, years ago, when you were in the grade school, Dad was going to high school, and he stayed at Thorrington's in town, because it was too far from the farm to go to town. So he stayed at Thorrington's. Old Jet built a house in town because they had so many kids, it was too much for them to go back and forth. So Mrs. Thorrington stayed in town with the kids, and he stayed out and run the farm. And weekends, you know. So Leiswager was my teacher for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So when I was in the 8th grade, every Christmas we had a program. And presents and all, well, we needed a Santa Claus. So Dad happened to be out there, you know, with the Thorrington bunch. He went out there, so we needed a Santa Claus. So Dad was elected to be Santa Claus. And I'd seen him there, but I didn't think anything of it. And then time went on, and one night, it was after Loretta and I went to Detroit to work. And I'd come home that summer. And we had that big swing out in the front yard, remember?
I built that. And Glenn Gould come over and helped me build
Yeah.
it.
And it was a nice evening, and I was out swinging. Well, I'd been to Leo's dance hall, and I guess maybe Dad'd seen me there a time or two, and I was out swinging. And this old Ford
So
coupe...
you was a young swinger.
I was a young swinger. And this Ford coupe went by and backed up. Drove in the yard, and it was Dad. Would I care to go out with him that night? So I said, sure. So we went down to Thorrington's farm and picked up Ted Thorrington. We went back in town, and Ted picked up his girlfriend, his steady, was out of town, so he picked up this other girl.
Now, you were just in the 8th grade?
Oh, no, 8th grade had passed and gone. He was our Santa Claus at the 8th grade program. But then, see, after that, I went to high school 2 years, and then I went to Detroit to work.
Okay.
So time went on, see.
So who was the girl that he picked up?
I don't remember her name now. And
So you were about 16 or 17?
Oh, maybe 18, 19,
Oh,
somewhere around there.
okay.
And then we went out for the evening. Well, and Dad asked me if I wanted to go Saturday night to dance. Sure. You want to go up to the ball game on Sunday? Well, that's where I made my mistake. I said yes. I went to ball games ever since.
Now on the first date, did you get a kiss on the first date?
No.
Was he a shy fellow?
Well, sort of.
Must not have been too shy. He drove in the yard, so
He drove in the yard, and he had to have a lot of nerve to ask me to go out with him.
Well, he had to ask because, after all, it wasn't proper for the girl to ask the boy.
So what did Grandpa say when you trundled him in there?
Oh, mercy.
Mercy? Just like that, Mercy?
Yeah, that's what Grandpa said. Mercy.
So how long after that were you married?
Oh, dear. I don't know. I have no idea. Like I say, I don't remember dates.
Well, how old were you when you got married?
21.
21. So it must have been about 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's funny, in our family, Lizzie was 18. She was 18 years old, and she got married in October. Rosie was 19, she got married in November. I was 20, and I got married in December. So I told Bertha, I said, you'll have to be 21 and marry in January. When did you get married?
July.
But anyway, it's funny, 18, 19, and 20 in October, November, and December, and it wasn't planned, it just happened that way.
And every Sunday we had to go to the ball game. Every Sunday. And then Ralph and Loretta was going together. And of course Ralph played on the team. And Loretta and Alice Fryer and I always chummed around at high school, the three of us. We were three musketeers. So then Loretta was going with Ralph. And then I started going with Dad. And Bill Medlin used to come up here, and he played ball too. And then he met Alice, and the six of us was always together every Sunday. Every Sunday.
So that's what it is, played ball every Sunday.
Even after we were married, don't you remember?
Yeah.
Hurry up. Get going. After dinner.
Was it after dinner?
Sometimes we had to take dinner with us. We went farther away. And this one time we had a ball game. Where was it? You must have been along. What was the name of the place? They had their ball field in a cow pasture.
You had to be careful where you stepped.
Yeah. And, well, of course, Dad was manager. And John Bonnie got a bunch of them. And all these young fellas from town played ball. Well, sometimes they'd go out on Saturday night and they didn't feel like playing ball on Sunday. So this Sunday, a bunch of them didn't show up. So Dad had to fill in, and here he's just got his old work shoes on. Lou Huffman had to fill in, because Lou never played ball. And I never laughed. I can still see him going. Dad was running so hard, he was kicking himself in the butt as he was running. I wish I had a picture of that. And old Lou Huffman, he got a hit, and he ran. And he ran so fast, I don't know whether he stumbled or he was going to slide. He was crawling into base.
I remember that game.
Huh?
I said, I remember that game. I can't remember where it was. Bentley or
No, it was
up north somewhere.
Up north someplace.
Alabaster?
It was in that direction, but it was down Alabaster.
I can't remember. Yeah, I remember that game. That was funny.
How about when Aunt Lizzie got married? Was Aunt Rosie a witness in Aunt Lizzie's wedding?
I don't remember Lizzie's wedding.
You would have been too young. Mother, you should have remembered.
No, Lizzie got married in town. She got by some minister. Rosie was married at home.
At home.
And so was I. Your father and I were married in the old house.
Did you stand up for Aunt Rosie?
I think so. I think I did.
I don't remember. But I do remember Goldberg's coming out and wanting Rosie to go and work for him. Remember them coming in the yard that day.
Well, she said something about that the other day, didn't she?
Yeah.
They offered her a job and said, well, it's too late, I'm married now or something.
Yeah. She said they should have come sooner.
How did Aunt Lizzie meet Uncle Eber?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
Eva
I was
worked for
too
some
young.
farmer in near on that farm that Eva Ballinger lived on. Eva and Ron.
Oh.
In that square house.
Yeah.
I don't remember the lady's name. She was a widow, and Eva worked for this lady.
Oh, I never.
And I guess her husband died, and they had all the cattle there, and I think that's wherever they met. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably at a dance.
Probably. I don't know. I was too little.
Well, Aunt Bertha, did you ever go and help Aunt Rosie when her babies were being born?
I did.
It was Mother.
I went over and helped when she had to have her operation. I was only 14. I'd done more work then than I do now.
What was her operation?
Oh, I don't know.
Female problems. And she had to go to Bay City, and then we kept the kids at our place. And then we'd go, when Rosie came home, I went over, and they had Eddie Smiley there to help with the chores.
And before that, when Rosie had Josephine, I think. Yeah, Josephine. And I came from Detroit to stay there. In those days, a lady had to stay in bed 10 days after she had the baby. And why, I don't know. Whenever I had mine, I felt so good after that, I could have got right up and went to work. And but then they said, you should stay in bed. And so I did. And so did Rosie, and so did the other ladies. And so Rosie had Josephine. So I just took a leave of absence from where I was working. I didn't quit. And I told the lady that my sister's going to have a baby, and she wants me to stay at her place and help out with work. So I did. And then Rosie decided to name, since it was a girl, to name her Josephine. Well, okay. So I stayed at Rosie's a little over a week. And then Lizzie was due for her baby, so she sent Walter Wright down from Sharkyville, they called that place at that time, down to get me over to Lizzie's place. So she was expecting her baby any day. So and Rosie wasn't quite ready, to let me go. But Walter was there to pick me up, so I went. And then Lizzie didn't have her baby then for 3-4 days. Of course, you can't time it exactly. That's something you have to wait. And then when Lizzie had her baby, she already had 2 boys, and then she had this third one was a girl. So I had nothing to do with naming the baby, but Lizzie and Eber, they talked it over, and they thought, well, since I helped out, they're going to name the baby after me. And Eber had a sister named Louise that he thought quite a bit of. So he said, well, we'll call her Josephine Louise. And that was the name then. Later on, Rosie gave Joe. I'm quite sure.
Yeah. Josephine Louise.
Yeah, well, and Rosie didn't know it either.
Yeah, neither one knew what the other was going to name their baby.
And so it's too bad my name isn't Josephine Louise.
Now, is Mother's middle name Minnie?
Yes.
No.
My mother?
No, Aunt Bertha.
And Bertha.
I thought your
My
middle
birth
name.
certificate says just plain Bertha.
Yeah, but
No
you also
middle
said
name.
that the birth date on your birth certificate's incorrect, so
I
therefore
know
your
it is.
name must be
It
incorrect
is.
too.
Wilhelmina? Mom was going to call me Wilhelmina. Wow, what a name.
What does your baptismal certificate say?
Minnie.
Sorry. Betty, you should have asked.
I looked at it today and it says Minnie.
Oh, but I think probably what really
Irene
counts.
It was better than Wilhelmina.
Irene Gould, I think, has a sister named Minnie.
Yeah.
In those days, it was
A popular
quite
name.
a popular name.
Oh, sure.
Oh, so what?
Bertha Minnie Schrantz.
Because
Yeah,
you were.
and when I was working, and this man called up and wanted to make an appointment for Harvey Sherman. So I said, fine. So Harvey was evidently quite sick, and his brother came with him. And when his brother walked through the door, all white hair, oh my God, that's his brother Lee that was my school teacher when I was like 4th or 5th grade. And he come up to the desk and he said, I brought my brother Harvey in to see the doctor. And I said, yes. And I kind of looked at him and I said, you're Lee, aren't you? He said, yes. And he kind of looked at me, because he didn't know me. And kind of startled him to hear somebody say, well, because he lived in Pontiac or Detroit or someplace at the time. Well, he said, who are you? I said, well, think back to when
taught school?
Think back to about, I don't know, whatever grade I was in, 4th or 5th grade. I said, think back about them. No, just tell me your initials and I'll tell you who you are. And I had to say BS. Right away he knew my name.
Did he really?
Uh-huh.
Tell me initials?
He said, tell me your initial and I'll tell you your name. And I said, BS, his birth chart.
What a set of initials, huh?
That's not very fair. We're such a nice lady. Those are not, that's not fair. No, no.
But then he stood there and chatted a while and
I think you've done a very good job of telling your story about, you know, parents coming from Austria and mother coming as a baby, and we didn't hear about picking the potato bugs off the potatoes.
Tell us about the thing that Grandpa bought that was guaranteed to kill the potato bugs. Did you remember that?
no, never heard of that.
I think it was.
But they used Paris green, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
No, I think it was.
Something he had to mix up with water.
No, Albert or Walter told me about this. that
Probably water.
he looks in his magazine. There was this guaranteed potato bug killer, guaranteed. And it was, I don't know, $1 or $2 or something. So he sent in. It was 2 blocks of wood. The instructions were you put the potato bug in a preserve and you hit them like that.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, that.
And he paid that for
I
that
guess that's
joke?
what he did.
I never heard that.
I don't know how true that was, but evidently he was quite
Probably some of
disturbed.
Walter's deeds.
Well, I don't think Walter would make up something like that.
You know?
And to admit that he paid that, whatever
I
it
don't
was.
know.
Well,
I know
Grandpa paid for it.
we used to have to go and take the potato bushes and plop them in a pail and get all them hard bugs.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then them little ones, we just picked the whole leaf off if we could,
Sure.
because there were so many.
Or the eggs.
The eggs, yeah.
Richie used to take a magnifying glass and explode them.
Oh boy, he was always a little sadistic, that one. I can remember having to pick the tomato worms off of the plants, and
Oh.
And
They were hideous.
they were so ugly.
Hey, one time Beulah and I and Ma went out. And Beulah, they were so repulsive. Beulah, she made the funniest
She
sound.
can't stand the worms.
And she
Anyway.
just, she kind of cried and, well, I don't know, I never heard anyone.
She just about goes into hysterics when she sees worms. I don't know what she does with
But
all
then
these worms
tomato
that are around
worms,
now.
They were so repulsive.
Oh,
gee.
they're about that long, about as thick as your, and they had the green, and they had all these,
Yeah.
oof.
She took a pair of pliers and
Oh, God.
picked them off. Rather than use your hands?
No, we just knocked them off with a...
We had a pail with a little Paris green or whatever it was a poisonous thing.
Kerosene.
Kerosene.
Yeah, and they pop them in there, and well, they eat the whole tomato plant out.
They'd eat all the leaves off.
Yeah, just like these worms are doing now.
Oh, sure. Do you have any in Gladwin?
Oh, yeah.
You do?
Oh, yes.
Pardon?
There's quite a few there.
Some of the trees are stripped east of my place. Remember what we seen this morning?
Really bad.
They are along M61?
Oh, yeah.
Over here to the thumb area. We were to the thumb area the other day, and it's just unbelievable. Just barren.
Oh.
Didn't they spray it?
I don't know what they did over there, but they're just big areas. There's no leaves.
Terrible.
Dear.
And not only that, but then they'll lay eggs.
They do.
Yeah, well,
When you see brown patches like this on your trees in the fall, you know that's where they've laid their eggs. And then in the spring they start. That's why they put them burlaps around the trees, and somehow or another the worms are what gets in there, and
they do their job.
yeah, and then
job.
you